Well, good morning. Broadcasting from my studio in Salt Lake City, Utah. This is Jerry Hardesty. I am the producer and host of the Artist Voice, and I empower artists to tell their stories and talk about their art. Now, in the past, if you are a listener, in the past, you know that you could only listen, but now you can watch and listen as we're streaming both to Facebook and YouTube. You can also comment and ask questions. In fact, we encourage you to comment and ask questions. In a minute, I'll put up the comments section. Actually, I can do that right now. There it is. So put your name in there. Tell us who you are. And please, like I say, make a comment or ask questions. Even ask a question of the artist when we bring her on. If you missed the live show, you may listen almost immediately as there will be a saved recording saved on Instagram on Facebook and also on YouTube. So my guest for today's show is Colour Maisch, who claims to be an emerging artist, but has a number of accolades and credits to her name, to her resume. So welcome, Colour, to the show.
Hi, how are you? Thanks
I'm
for
great.
having me.
Well, my pleasure. It's great having you as well. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, it's sunny and
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
nice,
nice.
nice day for a change, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Yeah,
Beautiful.
things are good, all
Look,
considered.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like you're in a studio.
I am. It's kind of one of the few quiet places in my life right now between, home is full of kid and dog. And so, yeah, just I'm at my studio. I share it with a couple of people. But this morning it's nice and quiet. So just me.
That's good. Well, where is your
Yeah.
studio?
It's in downtown Salt Lake City, so it's pretty close to the freeway on-ramp. So yeah, it's an old building. I've been here quite a long time. So it's the perfect space. Good. Yeah, it's a good workspace.
Great.
So,
I'm envious.
yeah.
I'm envious.
Honestly, through the pandemic, it has been such a saving grace being able to come to this space and be able to feel safe and to kind of step away from everything else and just
Sure.
come and work. And yeah, so, and our house is about this big. So
I understand.
yeah,
Right now, I'm in a extra bedroom or the third
yeah,
bedroom that I've converted to a studio, but I also adapted my double garage. So when it's
yeah,
warm, I work in my double garage. In fact,
yeah,
we can't park our cars there. So
yeah.
anyway, well, I'm sure that you have been asked this first question. More than likely, you've been asked this first question. But how on earth did you get the name Colour?
So my crazy parents, my dad is he's an artist and very much I'd say a divergent thinker, and he, long before I was born, he was talking to a friend on the phone and he asked her what she was doing. And she said, "Oh, I'm watching my daughter color." And my dad said, "Oh, what a beautiful name." And she was like, No. She's coloring with crayons. But he knew if he ever had a daughter, he'd name her Color. And apparently when I came out, even the doctors were like, yeah, that seems like it fits. So, yeah, it's been, I don't know, when I was a little kid, I wanted to have the name Julie. I did not, I hated, I was just like, oh, this is not my cup of tea. But, it actually really fits, despite the fact that none of my artwork has any color in it. And I pretty much wear black and white. I don't know if that's like just a funny joke or what, but yeah.
Well, when I first saw your name, I thought, oh, she's got to have made that up herself. But I think
No.
that's a fantastic story to learn that your parents named you Colour and spelled it Colour.
I know, and they're from Utah, so it's not as good. They're like, but Utahns have this funny thing, like they have funny names for their, funny spellings for names that like,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So it's kind of fitting.
Well, and then of course when I saw Color Maisch, of course I was pronouncing it wrong and thought it as mash.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard another interview, and it was Maisch, and so I'm thinking, okay, this has got to be made up. And then I read someplace that your husband's name is Maisch, and so it all works out, you know. What a fitting name for an artist.
I know. I know. I debated. I was like, do I take my husband's name? And I was like, I just decided to. There are a long line of Frasers here in Utah. And I think at the time it was a good way to kind of differentiate for whatever reason. Now I kind of don't. It makes no sense. But, we do what we do when we do it. And
exactly.
So,
well, I didn't want to offend you by asking that question, but I had to ask anyway.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry?
No offense at all.
And do you get asked that often?
I do, actually. Yeah. And ever since I was little. And I think a lot of people just don't believe me. Like they think that my name is some other random, and I actually get a lot of people. I'll introduce myself and then they just start calling me Sunshine this summer because I think color is too far out there. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, whatever.
Well, black and white, I envy anybody, or I admire, let me rephrase that. I admire anybody who does black and white work. I love black and white work, and I've tried it myself. And of course, I think it's very hard to execute.
Oh, it is. And it's funny because I love in other people's work, color, there's just,
sure.
I'm drawn to it. But I think in my own work, there's something about the distillation process that I'm drawn to. And even, my 2D work, sort of some of the stuff that I do with ink and Japanese papers, but even my ceramic work, I grew up with a pretty, my dad's a ceramic artist and a very, I would say, traditional ceramic artist. So very, lots of pots, but sculpture too, lots of glazes. And I've never been able to wrap my head around glazes or color on my work in a sense. There's something about the integrity of the clay body itself that I love. And that texture that I find just absolutely, for me, it's mesmerizing. And I have a hard time covering that up. And glazes for me, just in my own work, I always feel like they're such a surface thing. I have started experimenting with things like inks and other materials that kind of absorb into what's left of the pores of the clay. But yeah, the black and white, just there's something, and I find it as I get older as well, and the longer I'm working, that kind of narrowing down and simplifying and simplifying and simplifying, it gets so hard. It's like
it does.
Oh, so hard. And all of the things that aren't right are blaringly not right.
But I love the simplification of black and white. At the same time, I think it's a very strong statement.
I agree.
So, all right. Do you have a favorite black and white painter?
Gosh. Actually, no, I don't. Now that I've been really, I wouldn't say he's a painter, but I've always been really drawn to sculptors like, Judd and Sarah, in the sense that I think that their work is actually kind of black and white, even though it's not. Even though I struggle with, like in Sarah's case, the sort of manliness of it, for lack of a better, there's this masculinity to it that is interesting. But I do like the starkness of it. And for me, that's almost a black and white quality. So, yeah. Well, what about you?
Oh, I love Franz Klein and Robert Motherwell. Those are two of my favorites.
Yeah.
and if you've ever seen a Motherwell in person,
yes, I know, makes your heart just jump out of your chest. And
yeah. Have you been to the Broad in downtown LA?
I have, but it's been a spell. So, but go on.
Well, there's a Motherwell there.
Mhm.
It's huge. It's huge. Love it. And
Yeah,
there may be some Franz Kleins too. I can't remember though.
yeah.
Well, I didn't find a lot of biographical information about you, and when I put together my interview, I like to use biographical information like
Mhm.
and an artist statement and so forth. But I didn't find that. I did, however, find an interview from in 15 Bytes from 2013. Well, I know that you're not the same person now that you were in
Yeah.
2013, but there's some things I picked up on, and one of which was that you're in the catering business. Are you still in that catering business?
I actually just this year have left. So I actually started doing that just in 2011. I came on as I started as a partner with a friend of mine, and
Uh-huh.
I did that through graduate school and up until this year. And then I just, honestly, in 2020, decided that it I have other things I want to do, mainly being in the studio more,
Mhm.
and kind of focusing more on this stuff. It's in one respect, I think having a full-time career was amazing, because I was able to make work and not really worry about where it went.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of my work in the past has been pretty ephemeral, would be a nice way to put it. A lot of my ceramic stuff, especially, it's pretty fragile and not super. I like to tell people if they do want a piece that they have to be comfortable with the work changing over time,
Mhm.
because
That makes sense.
yeah. But just I think I think this year has been pretty transformative for lots of people in lots of different ways. And
Absolutely.
it definitely highlighted for me where I want to be spending my time. And um, so, yeah.
Well, at one time you were also teaching at the U. Do you still teach?
I'm not teaching right now. And I was just thinking about that the other day and how much I really enjoyed that and how much I enjoyed teaching non artists, so people who weren't art
Uh-huh.
majors,
Hmm.
um, and especially through some other venues that I've taught through. I think I'm actually pretty passionate about sharing the idea that creativity isn't specific to a certain type of person. It's not just artists who are creative or this or that. That creativity is an
Exactly.
inherent part of the human spirit. It's what we are. It's what makes us human. And that accessing that part of our brain can be so useful in a zillion other ways. So
Hmm.
it was really fun working with, especially first and second year undergraduate students who are like going into engineering or nursing, and showing them how you can actually spend that time to shift your brain. And you can actually, I noticed this working at, I did work at Huntsman Cancer Institute with patients
Hmm.
there, and I
Hmm.
noticed this there as well, that you can actually see people, you can visually watch them shift from being in a stress response. So, say they're going about their day, they're stressed about their schoolwork, they're stressed about their cancer treatment, they're stressed about whatever, like what they're going to do for dinner. And you can actually really see starting a creative process and how their brain kind of shifts, and this like amazing relaxation that happens when we allow our brain to go into that zone space, and I think
Hmm.
that's such a cool thing.
Well, creativity, people even in the business world are using their creativity,
Totally.
uh, you
Yeah.
know, and that's difficult for some people to realize. Most people have the concept that creativity is for the arts and those of us who are in the arts, but it comes,
Yeah.
it's useful in the business world as well. And the business portion obviously is useful for us artists, so it's not all about creativity. It's
It's
also
it's true, and it's funny that, like, even though I've run my own business and I know what that looks like, the the part of that in the art world, I think, is so hard, and honestly, it's been one of the reasons that I haven't wanted to rely on my work as a means of income, because it just I don't know. It requires a degree of self-promotion that is that's hard for some people. Myself, and it's really, I think it's hard for all people, but it's just, yeah, I really shied away from that.
You have to use the other side of your brain.
Yeah.
And you have to spend a lot of, sometimes I find myself spending more time marketing in the business side of art than I spend creating art.
Right.
And that's difficult. That is very difficult in and of itself. And I've talked to other artists as well, and they have this very same problem. So
yeah, I mean, I've noticed just in the last little bit, like, trying to set up some, some smaller shows and kind of get my work out a little bit more, and how much, I mean, it's time consuming, but also if I can let go of my own ideas about why I don't like that part, it's just, it just is what it is. And, and if I can think of it more in the sense of sharing, like, oh gosh, how excited am I when somebody shares with me something that they're doing that I otherwise wouldn't have known about, if I can kind of reframe it that way.
Well, to share with you, I joined artstorefronts.com.
And cool.
It's a platform. Have you heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's a platform. You need to check it out. But they have so many marketing materials. It's unbelievable. It's overwhelming at times. But you also establish a website with the platform. So you create your own website, but they help you all along throughout. They have suggestions all the time. In fact, prior to Black Friday and Cyber Monday, they had you doing sales all along, all the way through the end of the year. So it's fantastic. Check it out. And if you want to, you can check out my own website where you can you can look at it, and get an idea of what goes on, so to speak. But
I did check out your website, and I liked it. I did mine through other people's pixels years ago, and it's a web platform for artists, and it's pretty easy to use. But that would be, it's nice having those kind of set in marketing tools.
Absolutely, it is.
During the pandemic, I found that people are so afraid to. People are, they're afraid to come out, and I totally get it, 100%. So we just did an opening where, and a sale where it was by appointment, and I did this with my longtime collaborator that I just had a show with, Gary Vlasic, and it worked great. It was awesome.
Sure. Well, at Art Storefronts, they have live Zoom sessions weekly, several different ones to help you out, and they put together playbooks for each situation, which is fantastic. But I just want to share with you, I mean, since I'm sharing here, share with you that you're the 89th artist that I've interviewed. And
wow, that's awesome.
From all over the world, not just Salt Lake City, but from all over the world. And so I am curating a show with all of these artists, going to be a virtual show. Originally, it was going to be in a venue here in Salt Lake City, and because of COVID and the pandemic, I've decided to move it to a virtual show. So if you would love to participate, I would welcome that. So I'll send you information if you'd like.
Great. Okay. Thanks. I love that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting it on in February. So
I think the virtual platform, I was a little bit, I don't know, leery. It was hard for me to wrap my head around. But we just had the state annual show, and I submitted a couple pieces with my collaborator, Gary, and I was surprised how it's honestly, it's a great second best,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. It's much better than nothing. So.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it does give you a sense of kind of the curator's vision, even though you don't get to walk through it and kind of see it in space and see it kind of how they might put it in a space. But it actually, I don't know, I was pleasant, I've been pleasantly surprised by those opportunities.
I as well. And I saw a virtual show by a Chicago artist that was really interesting, and he did it, I believe he did it on Zoom. Well, he created the show on another platform, and then he he actually presented it on Zoom, so that he was taking comments from participants and so forth and that kind of thing, and he was explaining himself as he went. So that's my idea. I'm going to kind of adapt what he
Yeah.
did. So, from your resume, I noticed that you've been awarded several residencies. So, what have you learned from these residencies?
Let's see. I think there's a lot to be said about concentrated time to work, and having the space to explore things without other distractions. It's funny, as I had a baby about 2 years ago, and I've just started looking into residencies that accept parents, or people with kids, and as a way to, I guess what it comes down to is I really miss that that time, and that space and the creative intention behind it. So that, I think, is the biggest thing about a residency. And most of mine haven't been so much connected with other people, though that's something right now that I'm really, really craving, would be to be a part of a resident community for a bit, even if it was just a couple of weeks, and to be able to bring my, my daughter and have that time to work. But it's funny, as I really have started doing a lot more research on residencies for parents, and it's such a, there's like 2 out there,
Really?
and and I in some ways I understand, people have arguments against people's children being a distraction and whatever, but it's not even so much that. It's like, how do you find the time for, childcare during that period,
Yes. Sure.
so that there is that space for people to continue to work.
Well, now you have more than one child, correct?
Just one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
just one. Okay.
Just one. Yeah. So much of my work lately has been Play-Doh cats. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, now, okay, one of your residencies, and you already mentioned it, was at the Huntsman Cancer Institute. Now, to me, that's an unusual place for a residency, for an artist residency.
And this one was definitely, I think the title artist residency on this one is, I don't know, it wouldn't be a residency in the traditional sense of a residency.
Okay.
It was more, I spent a year and some change there working with anybody basically who made their way through Huntsman Cancer Institute. So I would say my role there was a creative respite provider. And they have a pretty strong mission there about holistic care, and holistic care not just being chemotherapy and surgery and all of those things, but like the pieces that make a whole person. And so I spent my time there working with a lot of different patients, healthcare providers, and trying to help them find a space that was both, I would say, that where they could be present with what was going on for them, but also a way to step away from it at the same time. So, and it actually did inform my work during that time.
I couldn't help but inform your work.
Yeah. Even though I wasn't making when I was there. So, I was there once a week. I wasn't making my normal work at that time. It really was this very big reminder of the power of creativity and allowing ourselves to step into that space. I know a lot of people sort of, poo-poo at the idea of art as therapy. See, I don't either. I think that I think everybody, I think it's therapy for everybody, you know, whether you say it is or isn't. You know, I think it's
It
a
keeps me
way.
alive.
I totally, me too.
Seriously, back in 2006, I had a couple of heart attacks and a couple of strokes, and then my career in corporate America quit, and that's
Yep.
when I returned to painting, and it's been very therapeutic. So yeah,
It is.
I'm a big
I think,
proponent.
yeah, I think we forget about that, sort of that part of the mind-body connection, you know, and creativity being and art making and, you know, whatever it is for whomever, you know. I think that obviously it has many different guises, but just how integral that is to our existence as healthy people. And, you know, I think I forgot about that for a while, you know, being in the corporate world, or, you know, like being a business owner, super stressful. And yeah, and it wasn't until this last year that I was kind of like, oh, I can't, you know, at some point, you know, you realize the things that feed you on a very nourishing level, nurturing, and then the things that, you know, maybe don't anymore, and being willing to let go of those things. And then hopefully, I think it's kind of been amazing how during the pandemic, people, I think, have picked up creative pursuits that maybe they, you know,
Yes.
let go for a while.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm pretty passionate about that. I think it's so important for all of us.
Well, if we don't feed our creativity, then it can affect our health.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into process. So
Okay.
now, do you consider yourself a ceramicist or a painter or both, or
Neither, actually, because my MFA is in ceramic arts, but I'm not a traditional ceramic artist at all. Like I don't, I can throw like a tiny bowl on the wheel. I can hand build really well, but I don't have traditional ceramic skills, and my 2D skills, same thing. I think of myself more as a sculptor, and a materials handler. So, and honestly, the more that I have been at it, I almost think my biggest, where I am the most at home in my creative world is through observing. So a lot of my work is with found objects, and seeing things in nature, or when I'm outside, or even just driving on the freeway, of kind of observing materials, and a lot of them are industrial materials.
Well, you don't stop and pick those up on the freeway, do you?
I stop and pick up the most random. I am definitely like, I thank God I'm not like a pack rat, but I definitely have that tendency of it's materials. You know, it's that kind of stuff. It's, you know, I can see some stuff on the back of like a semi truck, and, you know, it'll be, you know, the scale will be really big, but I can kind of see like, oh, the way that those materials were put together in that way kind of makes me sort of, I want to take the micro of that, because my studio space, I don't have a ton of room. I have some room. But it's a lot of observing, and honestly, like walking around and going places, and seeing that stuff that catches your eye in your periphery, you know, and your peripheral vision, of like, oh wow, there's something in that, and finding kind of the beauty in everything that is around us, that we just we get so busy, you know, and we're so in our heads about whatever, you know, dinner, this, that, or the other thing, that we can't even stop to see like, oh wow, that's kind of amazing. And how do you transform those things into something that everybody else can see the beauty in them as well? So in that sense, I don't know if I'm a ceramicist or a painter, but I'm definitely, my work is very material based, and process oriented, and that process is kind of starts with an observation and then this sense of peeling away all of the layers. But I think probably what is at the heart of it is just a curiosity of like, oh, what is that going to do? You know, and that is honestly one of the biggest. And I remember my dad saying one of his favorite things about clay was like opening the kiln and it was Christmas morning. You know, it's like always Christmas morning because you never know what you're going to get. You know, you're like,
Yeah.
you kind of have the sense like, you know, he probably does a lot more than I did, but you know, this like opening up and it's like, ooh, what did it do? You know, and I think that that honestly is like the, you know, the most magical part of making, you know, and I know for a lot of people, they want to know what they're going to have, you know, like, so they have this idea and I love this. I so wish I could do this. Like this, like, okay, I'm going to have this end product when I'm done. Like, this is the vision that I'm needing to create. And, I don't ever have that. I never know what is going to unfold. I tend to make a lot of different pieces, smaller pieces that I won't really, you know, I have no idea what I'm doing in the sense of like, okay, where is this going to go? But I know I need to make it, or I know I need to collect these materials. And then they tend to, then there's this process at the end of putting all of those pieces together into something that I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That needed to be with this, and this needed to be with this. So.
You know, there's a small group of what do I call this group? A small group in the Salt Lake City area who puts together pieces like Chauncey Seacrest and Vince Matina. They put things together in unusual ways.
Mm-hmm.
Are you part of a group like that?
You know, my main collaborator that I've been working with for probably the last, at least 10 years, Gary Vlasic, he and I do a lot of, that's a lot of how we work. So we started out, he has a dance background and a performance background. And we started out with us kind of collaborating on him doing that part and sort of I came in on this other visual level. But as we have progressed over we've had a couple of shows in the last 5 years. We just recently had one at UMOCA, where now we just sort of, we have this really kind of beautiful back and forth where it really is I don't know, there's something about that bouncing of ideas that is kind of magical and broadens things in a way that is very different from when you're working alone. Sure. And, you know, and he, like, working with him, he definitely has a sense of scale that's a lot bigger than mine. And so, but I have this textural sort of softer quality to my work. So you start to take these two pieces and you add them together. And I think the synergy is both during the work, like while we're working, and the end product is really, it's been so fun to do that, and such a nice break from my own, you know, I always continue to have my own work and my own stuff that I'm doing, but it's just a different way of working. It's awesome.
Yeah. Sure, you bounce ideas off of one another, and you go from there and grow from there. Well, I recognize Gary's name, but I don't recall his work. I'd have to look him up. I think I've seen him on Facebook, probably.
Yeah, so he was primarily he started out as a dancer and has done lots of performance pieces throughout the years, and he has does a lot of collage as well. So our work is very, very different. Like his is, it's quite funny, is like exploding with color, and it's lush, versus mine is, you know, very.
I would like to see a collaborated piece that you two have collaborated on.
Yeah, our last show at UMOCA, we just took it down a couple of weeks ago. was actually, I think, the color scheme. So we have been working on this this series that it's an ongoing process, and we sort of initially titled it Albedo, Rubedo, Negredo, which is the whole, the premise being alchemy. So taking base materials and what happens when you find sort of the nugget, or, in traditional alchemical language, the gold inside of base material. We've the show at UMOCA was titled Prima Materia, so the primary material.
Mm-hmm.
And the basis of that show were these pieces that were, so many of them honestly were literal garbage. So it was like things like these old, like the most beautiful, these things that we had found outside that had probably been outside for 20 years. And the way the paper weathers, and the way that, like, and so much of it was that ability to like observe and to see that beauty, and then take it and transform it and put it in a space where other people can kind of see, like, wow, I'm not really sure why that's beautiful, or why that like makes me, I mean, this sounds terrible, those things that you kind of want to, I don't know if other people have this, but you almost want to lick, because there's
Oh dear.
there's just like that thing where you want to like, you want to like, you just don't know how to, it's that sense, that textural thing, of like, you need to be able to feel the touch, like you need to be able to sense that texture, and
Well, don't lick it, please.
I know, it's like that thing where people eating plaster, you're like, you might just actually have a problem.
Or leaded paint.
Yeah, but these pieces were just really, it was pretty amazing to be able to kind of find these things and transform them in a way that was worked for us.
I love rusted objects, finding rusted objects, or even I've tried to rust some myself, which you can do, and I've had some luck doing that, but not a great deal. But I think those are beautiful. Have you ever gone to a junkyard, or do you dumpster dive?
Lots. Yep, both.
Both?
Lots of those.
Oh, you're so feminine. I can't imagine you doing that.
I'm actually a total. I'm a dirtbag at heart.
You're just common folk.
I'm a dirty. Yeah, I can get in. I can get dirty. I'm not. Yeah, lots and lots and lots of scouring places where other people discard stuff, and finding those things. But the part of what we had been working on with this ongoing body of work is we even reused some of the pieces that we had in our last show before this recent one, and just kept distilling them down and distilling them down and distilling them down. And, I keep using that word, but that really is, I think, where what I'm interested in right now in terms of making, and the work that I'm drawn to, is that, like, what is that prima materia? What is that thing that the core, and I don't know, we all have different things that we're drawn to at different times, but that's
Sure.
that's where I am now.
Well, experimentation, I believe you said experimentation, or maybe you called it playfulness, I believe, is a big part of your studio process. So experimentation, playful. You want to address that?
Yeah, so I think a big part of what is fun about making work is simply seeing what things will do, and being curious, being curious about how something can transform, being curious about how something can be changed, but still the same thing. And that also, that sense of not taking things too seriously. I think I'm definitely guilty of that. And I think that's honestly one of the reasons that I really loved making kind of fragile work is that it's inherent in that work that you can't get too attached to it. It just, it falls apart, and it just is not going to last forever. And I was in a period, I haven't done this for a while, but I thought about ordering some more of was making a lot of stuff out of hog gut. Which is like,
I read about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of what I liked about that, aside from it being, I mean, it was so smelly, and my studio mates hated me, and it was just, it left this, it was not the easiest material in a sensory way to work with, but it was, it's just, it doesn't last forever. And there's something, I mean, it can last forever, but it's also so fragile that there's something really beautiful about that. And you kind of, and it's funny, you know, it's this, it's kind of gross. And so there's something about that of like just not taking things too seriously anymore.
So you have an unusual sense of humor.
I do. I think I probably
but that's
good. Humor. Yeah.
That's good. That's a big plus.
Yeah.
Well, you know, back to you stating that you can't fall in love with something because it changes and so forth. And I had a teacher, mentor. There we go, mentor, who told me, he says, and this is not a great phrase, but he says, you have to kill your babies. Meaning, get rid of those parts that you really like, and your work will improve. So.
No, there's, I think, a lot of truth to that, because you can get so, and I'm so guilty of this, so romanced by these, you know, small things that you sort of lose track of the bigger, I don't know, one, the growth of your work. You know, you're not able to move past these like bits of magic, you know? So I think, I know I had an art mentor that was like, you buy art materials and you use them. And I was like, I like that. That's pretty, you know, there's something just really pragmatic about that and not precious, which, you know, it's hard not to become precious about things that you spend a lot of time with and that you put, you know, so much of yourself into. But I think there's a lot to be said about not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, your approach to creativity is probably less expensive than, say, a painter's who has to buy all the paint and the brushes and the palette knives and so forth.
Yeah, it depends. You know, it was, I think a lot of my stuff, I mean, I do have this love of beautiful Japanese papers, and those I have to really,
That's expensive. Yeah.
They're expensive, and they're just, you know, that it's an art form in and of itself. You know, I actually did some paper making for a while, and it's truly, it's such a beautiful process. And clay itself is not too expensive. I think most of the found objects that we're able to get a pretty good deal on, but some things, you know, there are those things that that I've been willing to spend a lot of money on, a relative lot of money on, and not knowing where that's going to go. You know, I don't know, it's hit and miss, but yeah, definitely. It's definitely different than being a painter and like having these set materials that I need to have all the time.
Supplies. And canvas. Yeah. Well, as a sculptor, have you ever tried welding?
I have. Yeah, I have. I did quite a bit of that early on. I haven't for a while, just simply I don't have the means to do it. Now I have a friend of mine who's a great welder. So if I need to have things welded, I can kind of get a pretty good picture in my head, and he's a great collaborator in that sense, as I can ask for help in that way. And I think that's been a really nice place to be able to expand my work, is to be able to ask for help from people who I know do a really great job at the things that I'm needing, and not to be a jack of all trades. You know, I think that is one of the things as a sculptor, like you really do need to be able to ask for help, you know, in terms of like, you know, making things happen if it's not just in one specific medium. So, and my stuff is never.
I think we as artists have a tendency to experiment and try different things in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
So we're jumping around a lot.
Yeah. And I think that is the process. And that's where, you know, you find those little nuggets of like, oh, I didn't know that was going to do that. Or, I mean, I think that's how you take those leaps forward in your work. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me see. What's your least favorite part about being an artist?
Straight up self-promotion. I hate it.
Bingo.
I mean, it's so hard. I'm not even on any social media, and I really I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook.
I noticed that when I was looking for material on you.
Yeah, I have my website, and I have a community of people that I keep up with, and but it's just, I don't know, it's just not my comfort space, and it's something that I know I'm going to need to just get over, you know, because I do feel like in a lot of ways I miss, not even just for my own marketing and self-promotion, but I think there is so much out there that is wonderful, that is, you know, like the platform to find it is, you know, is Instagram. And I'm a pretty active internet searcher. So I do actively search out work and, you know, research and things like that. But yeah, it would definitely be the self-promotion side, not my cup of tea. But this year I have some goals for myself. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, what are your aspirations then for your future career?
I think this year I would really, instead of my typical sort of, I don't know what my typical working pattern is, but just I have a pretty regular studio practice already. So I think just building upon that, because I have a little bit more time. And I'd like to search out, I have a couple of ideas in mind of a gallery that would be a good fit for my specific style of work, and just kind of am pushing that and just seeing how that goes and how that feels for me. I think one of the things that I'm really committed to is being able to make work the way that I want to make it. And and I don't know, that's just not something I'm willing to compromise on at this point. I'm okay having, you know, if I need to get another part-time job, I can, you know, I can do that. Like I can, you know, I can make things work, but it's really important to me to be able to make work in the way that resonates with my own, you know, my own.
So you're making your work for you and not for someone else who wants to purchase your work. If they like it, great. And if they buy it, great. But if not, you're making it for you first.
Yeah, it's a very selfish endeavor, you know, and I get so much from it. And I think for most people, it is a selfish endeavor, you know, and it, as much as it is like so wonderful to share it and to see work move into somebody's home or their space, and have, like, for people to love that and to love something the way that you loved it, like that, I think it is so rewarding and so amazing. But I think at the end of the day, like, you know, we have so few things in our own lives that are for us, you know, and I think it's really important to preserve those things and to have that space of like, gosh, this is my joie de vivre. This is my, you know, my thing that I get to make while I'm, you know, in this iteration on this planet. And like, it's pretty cool.
Well, that being said, do you do commissions, or would you do commissions?
I have done commissions, yeah, and I think it's mostly people who resonate with my style of work. So they're pretty open to, and it's not as though I would never, like take feedback, because that's not true at all. I mean, I do love a collaborative process. But I think there are certain things that we all, I'm sure you have this in your work as well, like things that you adhere to that are like, that you're just maybe unwilling to compromise on, because they're what make your work, or what make it special for you. So
you're putting your name on it, and therefore, or you should put your name on it. So.
Yeah.
Well, along with your aspirations, are you attempting to get gallery representation outside the state of Utah or outside of Salt Lake?
I am. I'm gonna give it a whirl. I mean, I have no idea. I've kind of just started researching and doing, but it's a little bit daunting, honestly.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see more residencies in your future?
If that's something I've just, my little girl, she's 2.5, and I think, my husband's a teacher, and I'm just starting to see like, oh, that's something that we could do, and I think it would be amazing for her and amazing for us. And so it's something that I'm actively starting to research.
Are you familiar with and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's a fantastic residency program in Omaha, Nebraska.
Well, I can't think of the name right now. There's not the Kohler.
No, it starts with a B, I believe. I'm sorry, I've mentioned it.
I'm so bad with names. Like,
me too.
I'll never forget.
But I've got I've got an excuse. I'm an old man.
I don't have an excuse. I just am bad with names.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a fantastic program, and I mean they have a huge building in downtown.
I know what you're talking about, and why can't I think of it? Because I was actually just, it's an old downtown. It's like an old factory that now has. Yes. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Apply there. I'm encouraging you to apply there. Okay. I don't know if I accept kids or not, but I think it would be a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I do too, and I feel like I'm ready for that now. I mean, the last couple of years, my work has been very hit and miss. Being an older new mom, that's definitely.
You're fine.
Yeah, it's definitely taken a toll on my work, and I haven't made as much, but I'm excited, and I'm excited to kind of get outside of my comfort zone, and yeah.
Another one would be Marfa, Texas.
Oh, so we're doing a big road trip in the spring, and that is on. I have this whole process, and I can't. That whole space I think is. I can't wait to visit and to wander around. So.
I've never been there, but I would love to go and see. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's way out there in the desert with nothing around, which is it's unbelievable.
Well, it was so funny because we were looking, and we're like, okay, we'll go through El Paso, and I was looking at it, and I was like, okay, it's not that far from El Paso.
Oh, yeah, right.
And Texas is giant, and so you kind of can't tell if it actually is not that far from El Paso or if it's like from here to California. So,
it's a long drive. It's a long drive.
Yeah.
As we were on a cruise in Houston, and we drove from Houston back home. And it just took forever to get across the state of Texas.
Yeah. Vic, we're still in Texas. Yeah.
But anyway, there's some fantastic residencies, and I'm sure you'll come on to them. Those are two that
I think
it'd be fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we've been on here almost an hour. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, just thanks so much for putting on this podcast. It's so much fun to listen to. I love hearing everybody's different stories and their their own process and their own tidbits about making. So thanks. It's been really such a joy.
The process is so interesting to learn. I've learned a lot from the various individuals, the various artists that I have interviewed, and it's really quite an experience doing it. So
yeah. Well, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to get to know you, and I hope to see your work. And let me know what when you're doing another show, and I'll keep
Okay.
you informed
Ditto.
about my show that I'm curating. So, all
That sounds great.
right, great. Well, thanks
Okay.
again, and
Thanks,
your
Jerry.
episode 89, and it should be on sometime within the next few days on the platform, podcast platform,
Okay,
podcast. You know what I'm talking about? Apple Podcasts.
I'll share it with my friends on my non-social media ways.
Okay, great. Sounds good. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks. Well, again, thanks for watching and listening. You can find Color on her website at colormaisch.com. That's COLOURMAISCH.com. And you can find the audio portion of this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. You may also listen to the show on the podcast, the show's website, which is www.theartistsvoice.info. Watch for the announcement on Facebook and Instagram for the date and time of the next show. In the meantime, be safe. Wear that mask when you're going out. Keep your social distancing. Be safe and enjoy the holiday season.